Welcome to the Sport Exchange with me, John Robbie. Hi guys, welcome to the second season of the Sport Exchange with me, John Robbie. Thanks to all of you for the feedback on season 1. We hope to make this one bigger and better. Please remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app in order to receive updates. Enjoy. Today on the Sport Exchange podcast, we meet one of the more interesting Springbok rugby captains. Although he was voted the South African Player of the Year in 2001, he's always seemed to operate a little bit under the radar, unlike his predecessor and successor, the mercurial Joost van der Westhuizen, and of course the glamorous Bob Skinstad. Welcome, Andre Vos. Andre, great to see you after so long. Thanks for coming in.
John, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Is it true you were always understated? You always seem to be a reluctant star. Is that a fair observation?
I think that's probably fair. I think if you have a look at how I've probably handled things after my career, sort of sneaking back into South Africa, hoping that no one finds out that I've come home. So I really enjoyed what I did. I love playing rugby. I love representing South Africa. But if all the other things could perhaps fade somewhere into the background, then that would probably be all the better for me.
You didn't like the limelight?
I didn't mind it, but it's not something that I actively seek, I suppose.
You've been captain of just about every team you've played for, though. It seems strange that for someone who's described the personality, the rugby personality that you had, and yet the fact you've captained all the way through, it seems almost at odds with what you've just told us.
It might be a bit of, yes, it is not something I've spent that much time on. I enjoy sport, I enjoy team, and I think within that environment, that's where I excel. I think as a human being and interacting with other human beings. The fact that other people all of a sudden, because you represent a team that represents the nation, other people want to know and have questions and want to engage. That probably sits outside of that initial love or the initial environment of team and working with guys.
So on field and behind the scenes, that's what you love, but not the public side of it.
That's what I enjoy. I wouldn't say I don't like the public side, but if I have the opportunity to sit at home with my family and my friends, as opposed to being out at an evening, with 1,000 other people, it's an easy decision for me.
And tell us about captaining EP as a pipsqueak against the All Blacks. That was what, 96?
That was 96. So it's strange how things happen. We before we started the discussion, I mentioned that I played other sports and I didn't necessarily think that rugby was going to be the one, and it all happened quite fast. You'll remember Alex Wiley?
Yes, Grizz.
Who came to South Africa, was the EP coach. He watched one game. It was the InterVarsity game. UPE, now NNMU, playing against Rhodes, and I had a decent game, and the next thing I knew, I was in the Eastern Province team. And not soon after that, as you say, as a very inexperienced, very young player, having to try and lead and guide, or not necessarily guide, but work alongside players like Audrey Geldenhuys, Armand Dupree, guys who'd been around the block and some, and so that was a massive learning curve. But I think the thing about rugby that makes it so special is that the guys, they said this is the decision of the team, of the coach. They want this youngster to do his thing, and it was great to work with him. I'll probably just share one story on that. So our first match was a home game, and I don't know if the guys still do it now, but it's where you stay in the hotel the evening before game, even though it's a home game. You're like, okay, guys, we've got to get together, got to get the spun gears going, and I don't know how it happened, but there was only one guy who I didn't want to roommate with, and that was Audrey Geldenhuys. And when I got to the front desk, found out who my roommate was. So, I mean, I was actually petrified, is the word.
He was a very hard man for people who don't remember him. Yeah.
So I ran to the room. I dropped my bag down and I just ran to the nearest room where I knew some people, and it was the Mnet movie on the Friday night, and watched the Mnet movie, and then went back to the room. And by the time I got back, he was in bed and asleep. So then I'm like, don't wake the soak up. And I was still in my clothes, my tracksuit. So I unzipped my tracksuit top like one zip notch at a time. Didn't shower, didn't bath, didn't brush my teeth. Just crawled up into bed and went to sleep. Was he the dirtiest? Was he the dirtiest player you've played with? It was quite interesting on the field because you would. I mean, the man, when he hit someone, he knew how to hit them, and it was more often than not, it was a very clean strike, and you could hear it from the other side of the field.
Yes.
And the ref would give the penalty. I'm like, Audrey, listen, we need you on the field, please, just try hold off on the punches. No, I didn't do anything. And you're like, China, but I heard it from the other side of the field. How can you tell me you didn't? No, but I mean, I suppose, it's something we've seen in international rugby. You have to have an enforcer at number 4. It's not uncommon. And
especially in those days where people could hit. Nowadays, he wouldn't have lasted a week, eh?
It is interesting. The game has changed, and this is like completely on the other side of the spectrum. Just having a look at the Football World Cup at the moment.
Yeah. Did you see Neymar the other night? Rolling around.
So it's ridiculous, and I really think, and I mean, and this is not my position to say it that much, but I think FIFA have got a huge job to do. They've got to get these guys. It's not something. If the guys want to pretend they've fallen or pretend they've hurt themselves, that's fine. But you can't take on the referee the way the guys are doing it today. I think it's not a great example for young people,
for kids
around the world. It shows them that you don't have to respect authority. And I think...
Well, remember Lut de Jager in the last World Cup where he made a mistake and the ref said something and he said, "Sorry, sir."
Jammer oom, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It was fantastic. What do you think of the TMO in rugby?
No, I think it's right. I support it. I think you have guys who it's their job, and if the decision is going to determine whether one team wins or loses, or one player stays on the field or not, then you have to use that technology, because everyone is working hard, everyone is preparing. As I said, it's their job, and you want the right result to give the guys the reward.
But it's too far now. It's killing the game. Surely it should be done in private, like the soccer people do. And if television bought into it, then maybe you could to stop that real howler. Where do you draw the line?
I don't know. I suppose it's all new, and we'll hopefully find an equilibrium at some stage. But on the whole, I think it's probably the right way to go. Just because, as I said, it's the guy's job, and you want to get, more often than not, you want to give them and the team the right results.
Someone said to me, you once said, if you had your time again, you wouldn't have played rugby, professional rugby. Is that true?
I don't know. So I loved it. I really, really did. I think that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but I also am fairly happy with the fact that I'm in the next phase of my life now. So there was a season. I enjoyed the season. I gave that season everything I had, and now I'm very happy to be in the next season. And as I said, walking down the street, hope that people don't recognize me, and rather, if I'm in a client meeting, have people engage with me as a result of who I am now, as opposed to who I was.
Almost because I sometimes find myself embarrassed by the amount of effort and passion and total dedication I put into rugby, to the expense of other things. Do you find a little bit about that? You're almost embarrassed to go back?
So I don't know if you're asking what I'm thinking, but
yeah.
But I don't know what you're asking.
Are you almost embarrassed at the amount of effort you put into your rugby career at the expense of other things?
No, I don't think I am because I was very single-minded at that stage of life. I had a goal. I had something I wanted to achieve, and I think when you do have that, then you sacrifice and you apply yourself to the best of your ability, and that's what I did. So I don't think I'm embarrassed by that. I will say though that as a result of that, it did detract. It did mean that I missed my sister's 21st, etc. And the list goes on. Missed friends, marriages, all those good things. So although I definitely say not embarrassed by my single-minded approach, because that I think and I hope was some of the reason why I had some success. But I think maybe where you heard that thing, that it did detract from you living in inverted commas a normal life.
Absolutely.
And I at this stage of my life, I'm quite enjoying my normal life.
Tell us about, because you played at an incredible time. You played in the 90s when the game went almost overnight from amateur to professional. You actually were there. I mean, there was no professional rugby career unless you went rugby league. Yeah. And so that must have changed your whole outlook and ambitions in life. Tell us about that. What were you doing? You were studying when the game went professional?
Yeah, so it is that. I mean, I suppose as an aspiring young schoolboy, you have aspirations of perhaps one day, representing your regional team or your national team. But at that stage, you didn't ever think that it could be your job. So I count myself as one of the last lucky ones that when you completed school, you went off to university. That's what you did.
What did you study?
There wasn't. I did a BCom. My majors accounting and tax. So I at school I enjoyed accounts.
What were your plans to be an accountant?
To be a CA, yeah. And then so I managed to get my degree, which is great. But as I said, count myself extremely fortunate, because if I'd finished school a year or two later, I would have probably got into my first year of my degree and then thought, oh no, let me rather give this rugby thing a go. So really one of the last to have been afforded that opportunity to commit myself completely to getting a degree and getting something behind my name.
And tell us about, from your perspective, when the game went professional, because obviously there were whisperings at the time of the '95 World Cup. There was the Rebel Tour that was coming, and of course the provinces were going to be included. And then some people would say Francois Pienaar reneged on the deal. Do you remember that whole deal? Yeah.
It's so long ago now, but it's actually bringing back memories. And we I think at the time trying to decide, do you want to support this route or that route? But I suppose as a youngster at that time was fairly influenced by the older guys around me and what the general consensus was. So I can't say that I committed a huge amount of time and energy to it. I was too excited to be there. So
what was your first pay package as a professional?
So I started out at playing for EP where I signed a contract for 60,000 Rand a year, and I thought that was massive. And we spoke earlier to the year before when there was no formal contractual relationship, but
brown envelopes.
After the game, you walk into the change room and your brown envelope is on your seat, and there was 1,000 Rand in cash. And as a university student, I'd never seen so much money before in my life, so didn't know what to do with it all. Although that said, I mean, playing for Eastern Province at the time, there were some guys who did a pretty good job of spending it all on that Saturday night on beers.
I can imagine. What's your advice? I mean, I would agree with you. You were the luckiest era. because you got your qualification, you enjoyed the old amateur rugby, and you still enjoyed the fruits of a professional game. What would your advice to a youngster today, starting off today, who had that same passion for rugby and wanted to make his career? Now that you've got your business hat on as well as your rugby experience.
Yeah, it's such a tough one, because it's not only from my understanding, and if I'm not explaining it the right way, then you must hop in here. But my understanding is that the guys are even being approached in grade 10s and grade, all the rest of it.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So it just seems a little bit lopsided that guys are making a commitment with regards to their lives, at the age of 16, and that they lose that balance.
It's the same in nearly all sport, though, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's something that sport needs to work through. I think we're all aware of the stats. If you look at the American sports stats, and how many of them after 5 years haven't got one US center up to the other.
In the UK, there are 150 ex-professional soccer players in jail.
So I think a little bit of that, and this is a little bit off that point, is where if you make a decision to do a certain thing, and as you say, professional football is probably even worse, because they sign the guys at
12, 8.
Exactly. It's not 16. It's a whole lot younger. So you've got a guy who's defined himself, or if it's a lady, defined herself by the fact that they're a professional sport or wannabe professional sportsman who has chosen to walk down this road, and when that rug gets ripped out underneath them, and it can be that rug can be pulled out at the end of a very long and successful career where you've played professional sport at a high level for 10, 15 years, or it can be ripped out from you within the first year where
one tackle,
you've got to go over on your knee, and that's the end of it. So at some stage, that rug does get pulled out, and then you have to have an identity outside of that person who's a professional sports person.
But how do you tell a 20-year-old that when he's living the dream, eh?
Yeah, no, it is, and I spoke earlier, so I'm by no means saying that I got it all right, because we spoke to my dedication and the fact that I threw everything into it at the time. So to try and figure out a way to get that balance is I think it's something a professional sport still needs to.
Absolutely. Tell us about going to Australia. You went and played for the Reds.
Reds, yeah.
And at the time, they were maybe the best provincial side in the world. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah. It was literally a phone call out of the blue. It was extremely bizarre. We were down in George at the time. The Lions were, I think we were getting ready to play a warm-up provincial game, and the phone rang, and it's like, there's been an expression of interest from the Queens and Reds. Knuckles Connolly, if you've ever,
I knew him very well.
Spent time, so
a rugby man to his bootlaces, eh? Yeah.
Brilliant rugby man. So he gave me an opportunity, and I was young then. Opportunity to learn, go and learn from guys like
John Eales,
David Wilson, Garrick Morgan, Jason Little, Timmy Horan, Daniel Herbert, Ben Tune. I mean,
wow.
It was an unbelievable experience. We just missed out on semis that year. So with that team, you would think didn't perform to potential, but it was unbelievable.
How did they take to this strange, young, tough, quiet South African?
They were great. They really were. So I think, and this is probably going to end up in Australia at some stage.
The internet goes everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you go to Australia as a South African sports team, it's a fairly harsh space. So I probably not going to expand a whole lot more, but they love their sport. They're very competitive. You're an opposition team who's coming in. It's not a friendly environment. But if you go there, you become one of them. They were absolutely unbelievable. Invited me into their homes. Really made me feel unbelievably welcome.
And any lessons we can learn from their rugby, because they seem to have slipped a little bit, and yet they seem to have a lot of common sense, and the players seem to have a lot of rugby intellect, if I can put it that way.
You're getting me onto something now that...
Good.
No, I just... and I'm folding my arms, so I don't know why I'm doing that. I don't think we're taught to think rugby in this country, and it is a huge bugbear of mine. I do hope that we, at some stage, realize that we are more than the big physical beasts who are out in the field who run over the opposition, and that's what the Aussies have done. They've made a real point of trying to understand the game and saying, how do we get this odd shaped ball from here to there, knowing that there are 15 of us, and there's some space out there. So I think that I remember one game. It was, I can't remember the exact year, either 2099 or 2000. It was the year when the Australians started to put the ball in behind the guy.
Yes.
So it always used to be, everything needed to be in front, and then all of a sudden,
front door, back door,
and then the guy started to come from wide to out and went in behind his back, and oh my goodness, we just didn't know how to defend this. I remember we went in to play the Brumbies. So it was 2000, if I'm not mistaken. I think Laurie Mains had just arrived here.
Yeah.
And we won our first home game. We went on tour and played the ACT Brumbies, and they smashed us. I mean it was
Gregan and Larkham and
the guys were standing behind the poles, and I remember Henny and Yapi going, which one do we tackle? Which one do we tackle? At the end, I just said, just whichever one you want to. Just put someone on the floor. But yeah, so they think rugby, and I would like it. And we've seen some of our teams. I'm an old lion, but it's so nice to see South African teams.
Brain rather than brawn, eh?
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly. Which I suppose you'll get from a guy who's a little bit smaller than the average loose forward. But I just think South African sport, because we've been blessed, and I think we have been with guys who are fantastic athletes, that we've maybe put the brain sort of in the drawer.
Well, tell us about Rassie, because Rassie's a strange man. I mean, he was a different sort of a player, a different sort of a thinker.
Yeah.
And now he's coaching the side, and there's a lot of optimism. Do you think he's the man for the job?
Yeah. So I was asked at the office before the first test. Everyone's going, "Oh, it's so inexperienced. We're going to get hammered," and all the rest of it. And they said to me, "What do you think?" And I said, "If I know Rassie the way I know Rassie, he'll have a plan. And I think we'll win."
How did you feel after 20 minutes?
So after 20 minutes, I was going, and I mean, I haven't spoken to the guys. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do on defense. They are trying to do the out to in, the up and in defense or not. But we tried it at Harlequins, and it's easier said than done, because you've been taught your whole life,
push them out,
hips go forward and then hips go out, and now all of a sudden, and your view of the world is that, and now all of a sudden your view of the world is completely different. So we did try to do it at the Harlequins, and halfway through this season we binned it. But
Rassie will have a plan. You'd back him for next year. Has he got enough time?
But Rassie will have a plan. He always did, and I enjoyed working with him. How things worked at that time is for the 1 or 2 seasons where I was the captain of the Springbok team. He was the leader at Super Rugby level, and I was at international level, and we had a great working relationship, and I enjoyed the fact that he challenged the norm, and he would think rugby. I mean, he was a real student of the game, and that's what I think our country needs at this time.
Tell us about going to the UK, because suddenly you announced that you're finished with international rugby. Was that purely a business decision? I mean, you said your body wasn't up to international
if you
rugby.
if you have a look at this body, it's not one that I think can handle, and I think I'll say it. So the way we train in South Africa, or the way that I was exposed to, is as a youngster, 19, 20, 21, your body hasn't developed, or mine hadn't, or wasn't even near to being developed. And here I'm engaging with Audrey Gildenay. So I went to prayer. When we moved up here to Joburg, Kobus Visa, Ian Mack, could bench 170 without even blinking an eye, and often the training session was, okay, you lot go stand that side, you lot go stand that side. The coach throws the ball up in the middle and he says, go.
Sort it out.
and I mean, so my body literally did get absolutely battered by guys who weighed 20 kgs more than me, and who at that stage were men, and I was still a boy. So I did feel sore, but I think it was also the right time for me. I'd experienced.
Did you approach Harlequins, or did they approach you?
No. So I actually I went to very bizarre story.
Most of your stories are bizarre.
There we go. I'm here to entertain.
Yeah.
No. So we came back from the overseas tour, and I woke up one morning at 5 o'clock, eyes wide open. I said to Caroline, "Come, let's go for a walk on the beach." And I said, "I think I've had my share. I think it's been fantastic. I've loved it. I've thrown everything into it."
How old were you at this stage?
I was 27.
Wow. Yeah.
And I said I've had the opportunity to represent my country. I've had the opportunity to lead my country. I had a season where that responsibility was taken away, and it proved to be the best thing. That was the year I got SA Player of the Year. And I said I'd probably like to go out on a high now. I don't want I don't want to be selected because of what I did the year before, and
living on past glory,
all those sorts of things. I think I've done what I wanted to do. Let's go and experience something new. So that's literally how it happened. So then I went to speak to SA Rugby very early in the next year. This is what I'm thinking, and they said, okay, thanks. So, I mean, and then I still played the Super Rugby season. I still played the domestic season for the Lions. We lost the Currie Cup final, and I was on the airplane the next day.
That's one thing we have in common. We never won a Currie Cup, even though we played in the final. You told us about Australian rugby. What was UK rugby like at that time?
I often, when I get asked to explain it, almost, although I didn't play in the 1980s and the 1990s here in South Africa, but I the stories you hear, and but what good club rugby used to be like, and the camaraderie that was there. So in South Africa, you arrive at the field in a bus. There's security guards that create a path for you to walk through to the change room, and it's all like, okay. There you drive in your car, you park next to the guy who's coming to watch you play. Yeah. You throw your bag over your shoulder. Hey, Andre, how's Luke doing? Yeah, he's a year old. He's doing well. I'll see you on the other side for a drink afterwards. And you literally play the game. You have a shower and you walk over to the other side and you have a meal and you interact with people. So that part I enjoyed. But then as 1980s, 1990s, it was in South Africa, it was also a very professional environment. So you have a professional CEO because Mr. X has decided to invest in Harlequins rugby. He wants to make a success of it. They run it as a business, and it's a very professional, workable environment. So I really enjoyed my time over there.
And you obviously used it. I mean, Harlequins is known very much as a stockbroker, a city club, etc. And you obviously used it to get into the stock market, into a business career. Tell us about that. Was that calculated?
Well, it wasn't before, no. So I didn't decide to go and play at Harlequins because I wanted to get a job in the city. We quite liked the idea of being in southwest London.
Where did you live?
At the time, we had a few little spots, Wimbledon area.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
I think, if you speak to most South Africans at that time, we probably had more school and university friends there than what we did here. So it was a real home away from home university type experience. So we really enjoyed that. And then it worked out that started working for a stockbroker in the city.
Long lunches?
Had to write. One or two, but the guys mostly put their head down. And remember, I started in 2007. Yeah. So that was the beginning of 2007. So the markets were starting to get, and it was just before obviously before the big crash. So there weren't many long lunches. It was like, how do we survive this thing?
And did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? Because I know, for example, Butch James said to me, he said, it's not the difficulty of finding a job after rugby. He says, when you've run out in front of 80,000 people in a World Cup final, how on earth do you find a job you like?
No, you do, and I'm very fortunate. I mean, I don't know how many people as a percentage of the population can, wake up and say, I'm excited to go to work because I enjoy the markets and we're in the private client space, and I enjoy working with people. I enjoy adding value. It's one of my things. If I wake up in the morning and I have a few meetings with my clients and I walk away and I think or I hope that I've added value to at least one of them, then for me that's been a good day. And
Sanlam, I mean, you're working with my old friend Ian Kirk is the head of Sanlam, etc. I mean, it's a company that's very different from how it used to be a few years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, I was very surprised to find what I found on the inside. You perhaps have a view of what you find on the inside, but I've been there 10 years now already, and it's a very entrepreneurial space.
And South Africa, I mean, we're all nervous about it, and obviously we know that regardless of the noise, ultimately it comes down to the economy. Are you optimistic?
So I'm a glass half full guy in terms of South Africa. I love my country. We've had people who've been doomsdayers for a while. Obviously, you need to be aware.
Stephen Mulholland, who's now in his 80s, says for 70 years they've been saying 5 years it's gone to the dogs. Yeah.
So there are obviously things that we need to be concerned about, and where we feel strongly about them, we need to stand up and make our voices heard.
Does business do enough, do you think?
I think if you look at 2015 and Nene Gate, I would think the answer is yes. The response was fairly emphatic.
Do you think people realize how close to the abyss we were?
Yeah, so it was quite interesting, and I was actually working up in Johannesburg at the time, and some of our clients were saying, "Just get me out," and that was the emotion at the time.
What do you tell him?
So, so when those sorts of things unfold, the price of the asset, or in this case the rand, usually responds fairly quickly, and it usually reflects a fair amount of the bad news. So if you have a look at, without getting too technical, long-term charts in terms of where the theoretical value for the rand was, we were fairly far away from that theoretical value, and it was as a result of the fact that everyone knew all the bad news, and if permutation 1 worked out, that's the result. If permutation 2 worked out, so all the bad news what was in the price when the rand was at 1650, 1680.
What did you think of the Gary Teichmann affair?
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about, Nick Mallett leaving it out, because you benefited from it, didn't you?
I did. I was at home, I think, until, if I'm thinking about the right tour, at home until halfway through that tour. But I think if you speak to Nick, he'll probably admit and say that was, one of the decisions that he probably regrets. I just think
he actually publicly apologized to Gary. I was at a function where he did it, but it must have been mixed emotions for you.
Well, I wasn't really on the scene yet, so probably not that much of an impact on me. Obviously, him moving on opened up the number 8 space.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And it is bizarre how it works. Is you haven't got the opportunity, and then all of a sudden the jersey's yours, and then it's hard for someone else to come in and take the jersey off for you.
How did you get on with Mallett? Because he's a man, as I've said many times, who never has to labour under the misapprehension that he might ever be wrong. Yeah.
So I got on really well with Nick. I spoke a little bit to my upbringing in East London, and you call a spade a shovel, and I think Nick does do that. He speaks from the heart. He says what he's thinking, and I didn't have an issue with that, because
how did you feel though about? Oh, sorry, go on.
No, but I will say that he's one of the men in South Africa who probably understands the game the best. From the people that I worked with, and just his commitment to the game. So we often used to, and you might get to hear this, we used to try and hide away from him and Alan Solomon's around the breakfast table, lunch table, and dinner table, because you just wanted to sit there and have your meal and have a relaxed conversation, and they were not able to do that. They just had to speak rugby the whole day, and there was no getting away with it. So if you saw him walking down to the lunch table, you used to lag a bit and take a little roundabout walk. You didn't end up at his table, because you invariably ended up speaking rugby, where you just wanted to have a relaxed lunch.
And his love affair, I mean that obviously figuratively, with Bob Skinstad. Even though you were there, many people felt, particularly in the World Cup of '99, that you were the man for the job. And until I think the third place game, he was always in. How did you feel about that? That must have hurt.
No, I actually didn't. I don't think I was right yet for the job. I think probably only the next year I started to come through. So that wasn't necessarily on my mind. I was just enjoying being in the squad and having the opportunity to represent my country. We played Spain, I remember, and things weren't going that well. It was a horrible night in Scotland, raining, wind, and we were expected to win, obviously, hands down by a fair margin. And at halftime, we weren't that far ahead. And as I was walking back into the stadium, I heard someone from the stands, "Force." So I thought only the right thing to do is to look up and make eye contact with the guy. And as I looked up, he bared down on me and he said, "Yella is cock." So I was like, okay. but fair play to him. On the night, we weren't great. But
Were you mates with Bob Skinstead?
Very much so. Yeah, we played S under 21 together.
Yeah.
So our relationship started there, and we've had a great relationship.
And Harry Fillion, I mean, there's he was my great opponent when I played and did fabulously well in business, was a very, very good rugby player, and yet a strange sort of character and a strange coach.
So he had a view in terms of what he wanted to do and the way he wanted to do it. I think maybe in South Africa at that time, the players weren't necessarily ready for it. So everyone had to have a laptop. You used to have to watch your videos on your that sort of stuff, and just where he wanted to take the game and what he wanted to do. I don't think,
maybe ahead of his time.
I don't think South African rugby players were ready for it at that stage. But so I think it's mostly as a result of that he struggled a bit.
If you had to give the young Andre Vos all those years ago a bit of advice, if you could go back now, look at that youngster and say, what I suppose what I'm saying is, what would you have done differently?
Yeah. Sure, I can't think that anything sticks out that I like to think I lived and played with my heart on my sleeve, and as a result of that, I committed myself wholly to this idea of this dream that I had, and I can't. Well, I hope I didn't leave anything out in the field, and I suppose that, as a professional sportsman, is the thing that you want to say. You want to say that every time you were out there, you represented yourself and your family and your country to the best of your ability. And in terms of big picture stuff, really thankful to have had the opportunity to have represented South Africa, but also, enjoyed my opportunities, whether it was in Australia and the UK. I think the whole experience and the fact that there was diversity in that experience made it a career that I can't think I would want to do.
And we might have a young Vos on the cricket field at some stage. Tell us about your son.
Luke loves his cricket, and he's a guy who can sit and watch a 5-day test. Literally almost every ball, and heads off to high school next year. So the responsibility of being a dad is all there, and Would you like him to be a professional sportsman? Tough question. He must do what he wants to do. I just in line with what we said a little bit earlier, just to be well rounded, I think, in your approach. To life, and if it ends up being that a percentage of your life gets allocated to a professional sporting career, so be it. But to always have the balance in life, that's not the be all and end all.
Fantastic. Thanks for talking to us, Andre.
Great. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Andre Vos, what a gentleman and what a career. Thanks to Slow in the City for hosting us as usual. Follow us on social media at TSE Advisory. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your favorite app for updates. See you next time. Cheers from John Robbie.